What is up, peeps? Hope we're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have acquired the full lawsuit of Scump and Hecz versus Call of Duty and Activision Blizzard. Something I can't even believe that this is actually on our screen right now. We could take a second to see Hector Rodriguez and Seth Abner, that being Optic Hecz and Optic Scump, both suing Activision Blizzard. We have the full lawsuit. I thought I'd dedicate a full video for all of you guys to go over the main points of what exactly is going down. So as per usual, we hope you guys all enjoy it. Make sure to leave a comment and a like down below. Maybe sub if you guys want more content like this react style. But let's dive into exactly what is going on, as we have now confirmed Scump and Hecz are set to sue Activision Blizzard and Call of Duty for monopolistic tendencies over Call of Duty competition and all things around the Call of Duty League. So let's break it down. And as we can see right off the rip, plaintiffs Hector Rodriguez, Seth Abner, and Hecz LLC, it is now confirmed no other CDL teams are on this filed complaint right here. So it will be Optic, Hecz, and Scump going against Activision Blizzard, bring this complaint for damages and injunctive relief against defendant Activision Blizzard. And when looking into exactly what they are accusing or alleging of Activision Blizzard, this action arises from Activision's unlawful 100% monopoly over and agreements unlawfully restraining trade with respect to professional Call of Duty leagues and tournaments. As a result of its myriad anti-competitive actions, Activision now holds an unlawful 100% monopoly over that lucrative and once vibrant market. So they're alleging that Activision now has a monopoly here. Crazy. Activision has used those unlawful monopolistic powers to prevent would-be competitors from entering the market, as well as to coerce the market's other participants, in particular professional Call of Duty players and team owners, to acquiesce to extortionate financial terms. They are accusing that apparently these players and team owners were forced to abide by and accept these way too high of prices to enter into a league in fear of being shut out from Call of Duty competitions. They are being forced to acquiesce to extortionate financial terms or paying way too much money to partake in something that otherwise they would feel like they would have no chance, you know? Absent its unlawful monopoly, Activision could never have obtained those terms, which enrich Activision at the team owners' and players' expense without any pro-competitive justification. And they go on to say, prospective team owners and players who were unwilling or unable to accept those terms were effectively frozen out of the market, while other prospective team owners and players were forced to incur additional economic burdens in order to satisfy Activision's anti-competitive terms. To continue, in late 2019, however, Activision took concerted and purposeful actions to obtain and perpetuate a 100% monopoly over the professional Call of Duty market in violation of so-and-so, and to wield that unlawful monopoly power to economically coerce the world's top players and teams to agree to Activision's rent-seeking demands and various trade-restraining contractual provisions that constitute, per se, those who could not acquiesce to Activision's extortionate terms were excluded from the market, or in a few instances, allowed to partake in the market only if they partnered with investors who satisfied Activision's preferences. Activision's actions were intended to and did eliminate all professional Call of Duty leagues and professional Call of Duty tournaments other than the Activision Call of Duty League. So they are trying to justify that, hey, they have a monopoly over not just their game, but the surrounding tournaments, including Call of Duty League. And they will go on to explain more of this, the fact that they maybe tried to get rid of other competitors in this sense so they could, again, allegedly monopolize Call of Duty competitions. And then with that monopoly, because you have all of the main competitions, teams felt compelled to say, hey, we need to pay this price. Like, if we're not in Call of Duty League, then we can't operate. And this will come back again later. We have some examples here. And this part is super interesting, as it actually clarifies the difference between Activision and Call of Duty League and that of sports. We'll use the NFL for comparison here. As another critical distinction between the Activision Call of Duty League and traditional sports leagues, Activision's copyright over the Call of Duty game provides Activision control over the essential facility of any professional Call of Duty competition, the game itself. Activision's copyright and trademark over the Call of Duty video games enabled Activision to swiftly monopolize the downstream professional Call of Duty market, a course of conduct that legal experts have described as conceptually similar to an unlawful tying arrangement. And so my one comparison on the top of my head is thinking about the NFL, right? The NFL owns the National Football League, but they don't own football. In the essence of what esports and video games has become, Call of Duty not only owns their own league, but they own the game. Like in this situation, you can't be competing in Call of Duty unless you're in their league. When it comes to football, though, you can compete at all levels of football, right? And I guess there are levels to Call of Duty, but Activision even has to approve a lot of those competitions ongoing. The reins maybe are a bit tighter compared to what the NFL is. They can't own an entire sport, right? When it comes to wanting to play Call of Duty, you're riding a different line because that is their game. They own it. So there certainly is a difference there. And it gets very interesting when they try to experiment exactly where this monopolistic those tendencies maybe first occurred, as they reference all the way back to when Activision, according to Hecz and Scump, began laying the seeds for its unlawful monopolization back in 2016. And apology, you guys can't see that, the camera angle, whatever. At that time, Major League Gaming, MLG, was the leading organizer of professional Call of Duty competitions, and Activision acquired that competitor. That acquisition was not subject to the Hart-Scott-Rodino Act's pre-merger notification requirements, and Activision did not voluntarily submit the transaction to the FTC. Activision thus completed its acquisition of MLG, thereby eliminating Activision's most significant competitive threat in the professional Call of Duty market without FTC approval. And I got no idea how the FTC begins to operate in these kind of markets. And at the end of the day, the biggest devil's advocate that anyone is going to have is these teams, these players. They opted in, they decided to be a part of Call of Duty League, and that very well could have a lot of merit to it, all right? I'm not here to try and argue against that. That's probably going to be the biggest counter that anyone opposed to this has, is you guys opted in, okay? You decided to be a part of this league, although it doesn't mean you can't help paint the picture of like, hey, Activision did get rid of all of its competition to have this league. And this is a point that has a very strong returning to throughout the entire 44 pages. Not just them getting MLG and going away with it and then, hey, maybe Call of Duty League, but also utilizing Overwatch League as an example of what could be good to further coerce owners to say, hey, CDL got to be great because OWL had a great first year, right? So it continues on. And here is where we finally dive into some of the numbers as well, which are very crazy. I apologize, you guys can't see exactly everything. Wielding its unlawful monopoly power as a virtual nuclear weapon, Activision coerced 12 teams to pay Activision a $27.5 million entry fee for the privilege of being in one of their 12 teams. Also to give Activision an unconditional 50% share of the revenue that teams generated from ticket sales, sponsorships, and other revenue streams. Can we just talk about how absurd that is? Like, we won't ever get a full proper reaction to all 44 pages here. To think that at any point esports was at a, you got to remember where esports was 3 to 4 years ago. There were teams willing, 12 teams willing to pay $27.5 million and give up 50% of revenue just to play in a league, to play a game. To think that esports was there to where we are now, that everyone's making layoffs and we're lucky to have jobs. I don't even have it. I don't have it. Nobody I know has a job anymore. We went from this to where we are now. That is crazy. And they also go on to talk about, make important references to, I don't even have to read it because we all know the heavy restrictions that Call of Duty would place on those sponsorship categories. We reference back to Scump and Raid Shadow Legends. They take over big sponsorship categories like the drink companies, Mountain Dew, Monster Beverage reference here, the military-related companies who, albeit controversial, pay a lot of money to these teams, apparently broadcasting sponsorships with cable television and streaming networks. They restrict all of these teams. So not only are you paying to partake in their league and to field your rosters and to employ your staff to keep on creating content and all the hustle bustle around the league, everything is out of your pocket. They're taking part of your revenue and they're restricting the revenue you actually can bring in. Like, on paper, how did anyone ever agree to this? How did anyone? Because according to Hecz and Scump, they felt coerced. Will that stand in a court of law? I don't know. But I'm kind of getting pissed off just reading all of this. Make sure to leave a comment down below how you guys are feeling and what the most absurd part about all of this is. I mean, god dang. And then this part goes on to say that apparently the economic impact on some of these players and or parties has been a net negative, right? If you are paying to be in the league and then losing out on potential other revenue because of the league, that could certainly be argued. We have Activision's monopolistic, trade-restraining, anti-competitive actions have caused substantial economic injury to these plaintiffs. Activision's unlawful actions forced Hector Rodriguez to partner with billionaire investors, whom Activision deemed suitable team owners. Rodriguez was then forced to agree to pay an extortionate entry fee to Activision for the privilege of partaking in the Call of Duty League, hand over as rent to Activision as disproportionate share of the sponsorship and other off-field revenue that the teams earned, and lose out on revenue opportunities, including sponsorships that Activision then prohibited the teams from pursuing as a condition of partaking in said league. Kind of what we just all said, reiterated, still a crazy agreement. And it gets really interesting here because we start diving more into numbers and the potential merger, or a lot of these teams bringing on billionaire investment or big investment just to pay this fee. So another big part of the argument is these teams, and again, we have to allude to Optic, but I'm going to talk about other teams too, had to bring on investors to pay these exorbitant amounts just to partake in the CDL. And oftentimes when you take on these big investors, you undergo maybe not necessarily unfair, but unlikely situations where you have to give up ownership and give up percentages of your company that might not be very suitable long term, but a lot of these orgs made these sacrifices short term just to be in this league, which is very detrimental for the future of esports, and that's something I will certainly stand by. But in this case particularly, we're talking about Optic and a potential merger of Envy, which was almost forced upon them to be able to be a Call of Duty partner. So a lot being thrown out here. Activision's unlawful conduct also caused Hector Rodriguez to suffer an economic injury unique to him. In September of 2020, Rodriguez, equipped with his newly reacquired Optic brand, sought to enter the newly monopolized market as an individual owner of an Activision Call of Duty team. Activision refused to approve Hecz as the sole owner of a team, thereby excluding Rodriguez from the market. In late 2021, that's November 2021, when the Envy merger happened, Activision forced Rodriguez to partner with wealthy investors that Activision preferred, namely billionaire investors that were connected to a traditional sports franchise. As a condition of partnering with Rodriguez, these billionaire investors demanded that Rodriguez grant them a 92.5% ownership share in his company if Rodriguez wanted Optic branded team to continue to partake in professional Call of Duty, saying that he pretty much had to merge with Envy if he wanted to compete because he needed an approved partner by the league, despite Optic being one of the bigger brands. And, we all know that story. Adding insult to injury, Activision has now effectively conceded that its operation of the Call of Duty League has been a colossal failure. Yeah, we could probably lightly agree on that. I think it's surviving, and that's not what it needs to be. It's not where it needs to be. First, Activision forced team owners to accept onerous new terms whereby the teams would have to release any claims against Activision in exchange for debt relief and a paltry sum of money. So I believe the way this reads is in return to maybe some debt relief and a little bit of sum of money against what they had to pay to be in the league, Activision is then like, okay, you can't do anything against us, maybe in the court of law. We're going to give you maybe a few $1,000,000 back on the ridiculous amount that you paid. We'll give you a little bag so you can't come after us for a big bag of complaints. That's how this reads to me. For the teams that did not acquiesce to those terms, they then retaliated by threatening to withhold lucrative tournament hosting opportunities, thereby starving the teams of much needed revenue. This part's a little interesting because I don't think teams really make money by holding events. I could be wrong in that, but that's just, again, my interpretation. Second, on January 30, 2024, just 2 days after the first major tournament, they laid off 60 of their 72 staff, leaving just 12 employees. Put simply, Activision's monopoly has run Activision Call of Duty League into the ground. Yeah, there's a lot to be talked about there. I think esports in general is suffering right now, but Call of Duty League certainly with the layoffs. They're trimming the fat and maybe even trimming some of the muscle around Call of Duty League. So this is the last one I'll bring up for all of you guys for now because it brings up some curious numbers that could be a solo video. Through at least the summer of 2019, team owners had the ability to transfer interest in their teams to new owners without oversight, and players enjoyed the freedom to move between teams. The market, not Activision, controlled the value. For example, 2017, Hector Rodriguez sold the majority interest in his Optic team to Legacy Esports Entertainment, is that Infinite, for $20 million. Moreover, through the end of 2019, teams such as Hector's Optic remained free to partake in the COD market by selling team logo merch to adoring fans and so. So they were free to compete without having to partake in the Call of Duty League. So at the end of all of this, the picture they are trying to paint and allege against Activision Blizzard is they have a monopoly over Call of Duty competition, and according to Hecz and Scump, they coerce the world's top players and owners to pay exorbitant amounts of money to partake in the league based off the monopoly they had already planted the seeds and put into place, eliminating all of the competition and, of course, controlling where all of Call of Duty competition is held. Therefore, if you're Optic Gaming or another team and you refuse to be a part of Call of Duty League, you can't even participate in Call of Duty competitions, which is generally true, right? There's not a successful Call of Duty team that's outside of the Call of Duty League right now, so I would generally agree with that. Now, whether or not it's a monopoly, that's for the courts to decide, but there are a lot of great points in here that certainly could have good refutes. But at the end of the day, where the Call of Duty League stands and where the Call of Duty community stands, I think it'd be obvious to say that there are two sides here, and one might be favored by the community. And what Activision Blizzard has done with the Call of Duty League has not met expectations, not in the nearest, right? I mean, it is no shock that esports needs a change, and I don't know if this lawsuit will be for the better or worse. As of now, Activision has responded, and they will be fighting this case. And this could mean a lot, guys. This could be very, very bad for esports, albeit it could be very good. These are scary times. Like, this is a face-to-face now. These are very scary times. I haven't had a job, an employment position, I should say, in about a year, been self-employed, and just about everyone I met when I first got into esports is the same way. They've either changed jobs or don't have a job anymore. I'm very grateful to be where I am, but this is going to be a big lawsuit and will be a big tell-all for the future of esports and franchise leagues and where these publishers and devs go as well, and if there's a landscape where these esports organizations can continue to live on. I'm not picking a side, but y'all know where I lean in this, but I'm sure there's going to be refutes in this case. Optic has been great for esports, but what's the downside of this? Does this mean a Call of Duty League without Optic? What's the future in that? Does this mean Call of Duty is going to go back to grassroots? I don't know what any of this means, but I'm going to keep on reacting. I'll keep on sharing my opinion with all of y'all, and I appreciate you guys being here. What do you guys think of this? Hecz and Scump are suing Activision Blizzard and Call of Duty. What a freaking world we live in. Till next time, take care. We'll see you back here soon.